After doing research for my first werewolf video, I had a question that kept popping up in my head. Are werewolves actually weak to silver? I went through tons of historical accounts of werewolves, and silver was never mentioned. It wasn't until I started researching more modern versions of the werewolf mythos that any reference to silver started popping up. Which leads us here. Today we will be sinking our teeth into a legendary topic, the curious case of werewolves and their supposed kryptonite, silver. From ancient lore to modern movies, the idea that a shiny piece of metal can take down a fearsome werewolf has captured our imaginations. But it made me wonder, is there any truth to this myth? Whether it's in classic horror films, TV shows, the silver bullet has become a staple in werewolf lore. But where did this idea come from, and why has it stuck around for so long? While there is more werewolf lore out there than I can count, we're going to look at the most common ones I was able to find in research. The legend of the werewolf is as old as human history itself, with roots stretching back to ancient Greece and medieval Europe. In ancient Greek mythology, the story of Lycaon, the king of Arcadia, is one of the earliest known werewolf tales. According to the myth, Lycaon angered Zeus by serving him a meal made from the flesh of a sacrificed child. As punishment, Zeus transformed Lycaon into a wolf, condemning him to a life of savagery and isolation. This tale not only highlights the werewolf's association with punishment and divine retribution, but also introduces the theme of transformation as a form of moral correction. Interestingly, there is no mention of silver being used to slay werewolves in these early myths. Fast forward to medieval Europe, and the werewolf legend takes on new dimensions. During this time, werewolves were often linked to witchcraft and the dark arts. The medieval mind was ripe with fear and superstition, and the transformation into a wolf was seen as a curse, often inflicted upon those who had consorted with witches or made pacts with the devil. Many werewolf trials from this period bear striking similarities to witch trials, with accused individuals confessing under torture to shape-shifting and other supernatural abilities. These stories commonly featured themes of cursed individuals, punishment for sins, and the involvement of dark, mystical forces. Despite the rich tapestry of werewolf lore in medieval Europe, there is still no significant mention of silver being used to combat these creatures during this period. In both ancient and medieval contexts, werewolves were portrayed as victims of curses or divine punishment. The transformation was rarely voluntary and was seen as a form of suffering or penance. This historical backdrop sets the stage for understanding how these themes evolved and how the association with silver came into play in later centuries. When it comes to medieval and early modern folklore, the methods believed to kill or repel werewolves were as varied as they were gruesome. In these times, people took their monster slaying seriously, and silver wasn't even on their radar. Instead, they relied on an assortment of more visceral techniques to deal with the wolfish threat. One of the most common methods was exorcism. Since werewolves were often thought to be cursed or possessed individuals, it made sense to call in the spiritual big guns. Priests would perform exorcisms to drive out the demonic forces believed to cause a transformation. If that didn't work, people turned to more permanent solutions, like burning at the stake. Fire was seen as a purifying force capable of cleansing evil from a werewolf's soul, or at least ending the threat for good. Decapitation was another popular choice, especially in parts of Europe where werewolf hysteria was rampant. The logic was simple: no head, no werewolf. It might not have been elegant, but it got the job done. Some folklore also mentioned using wolfsbane, a toxic plant, either to poison the werewolf or to create protective barriers. Holy water and blessed objects were also part of the anti-werewolf toolkit, reflecting the deeply religious context of the time. Interestingly, throughout all these tales of medieval and early modern monster control, silver is conspicuously absent. Despite our modern association of silver bullets and werewolves, our ancestors were more likely to wield torches, axes, and holy relics than anything shiny and metallic. This absence of silver in early werewolf folklore underscores just how recent and culturally specific the silver bullet myth really is. The 19th century marked a turning point in werewolf lore, with the emergence of the now iconic silver bullet myth. This period saw a shift from oral traditions and folklore to more literary forms of storytelling, and with it, the introduction of new elements into the werewolf narrative. One of the earliest and most notable mentions of silver as a weapon against werewolves can be found in Henri Poirat's novel La Bête du Gévaudan, published in the early 20th century, but based on 19th century accounts. The novel recounts the tale of a terrifying beast that plagued the Gévaudan region of France in the 1760s. According to the story, the creature, believed by some to be a werewolf, was finally brought down by a hunter using a bullet made from silver. This dramatic climax cemented the idea of silver's effectiveness against werewolves in popular imagination. The introduction of the silver bullet into werewolf lore can be seen as a product of the 19th century fascination with the supernatural and the occult. This was a time when Gothic literature was all the rage, and stories of vampires, ghosts, and other creatures of the night captivated readers. Silver, with its long-standing associations with purity and protection in various cultural and religious contexts, became a fitting addition to these tales of horror and mystery. As these stories spread, the silver bullet myth became more ingrained in popular culture. Authors and storytellers began to incorporate this element into their works, gradually transforming it from a literary device into a widely accepted aspect of werewolf mythology. By the end of the 19th century, the idea that only a silver bullet could kill a werewolf had taken firm root, setting the stage for its continued prominence in 20th century horror fiction and beyond. The 20th century was a golden era for the popularization of werewolf lore, and Hollywood played a starring role in cementing the silver bullet myth in the public consciousness. This was the time when werewolves transitioned from the pages of obscure folklore and literature to the bright lights of cinema, and silver took center stage as their ultimate weakness. A pivotal moment in this transformation was the release of the 1941 movie The Wolfman, directed by George Wagner and starring Lon Chaney Jr. as the titular character. This film not only defined the look and feel of werewolves for generations to come, but also solidified the idea that silver, particularly in the form of a bullet, was the only surefire way to kill these fearsome creatures. The movie's memorable dialogue and dramatic scenes made a lasting impression, with characters explicitly stating that a werewolf can only be killed by silver. The Wolfman wasn't just a box office hit, it became a cultural phenomenon. The film's influence extended beyond the silver screen, affecting how werewolves were depicted in various forms of media, from comic books and television shows to later movies and even Halloween costumes. The image of a desperate hero loading a silver bullet into their gun to face down a rampaging werewolf became an iconic trope of the horror genre. Throughout the 20th century, this trope was reinforced by countless other films and TV shows. From Silver Bullet, a 1985 movie based on a Stephen King novella, to episodes of popular series like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Supernatural, the silver bullet remained a staple in the werewolf mythos. This enduring symbol of vulnerability not only added a layer of drama and suspense to these stories, but also provided a tangible link to the creature's ancient and supernatural roots. As a result, by the end of the 20th century, the idea that silver could kill a werewolf was no longer just a literary device or a plot point in a single movie. It had become an integral part of global popular culture, recognized and accepted by audiences everywhere. While silver is famously known as the ultimate bane of werewolves, its effectiveness, or lack thereof, against other types of shapeshifters like dogmen and skinwalkers remains a topic of much debate and speculation. These creatures, steeped in their own rich and diverse mythologies, have unique weaknesses and characteristics that don't always align with the werewolf lore. Dogmen, for instance, are often described as bipedal canines that resemble werewolves but are rooted in cryptozoology rather than ancient folklore. Encounters with dogmen typically focus on their physical prowess and mysterious nature, but there's little to no historical evidence suggesting that silver has any particular effect on them. Most accounts and legends about dogmen do not include any mention of silver bullets or objects as a means of protection or offense. This could be due to their more modern origin stories, which haven't had centuries of literary embellishment to incorporate such elements. Skinwalkers, on the other hand, hail from Native American Navajo legend. These malevolent witches can transform into animals, including wolves. But their weaknesses are often more spiritual and cultural than physical. The traditional methods to combat a skinwalker involve rituals, sacred objects, and sometimes specific herbs. But silver is rarely, if ever, mentioned. The emphasis in these legends is more on the skinwalker's connection to dark magic and the cultural taboos they violate, rather than any material weakness like silver. The broader spectrum of shapeshifters in global folklore presents a similar picture. Each culture has its own lore and specific means of dealing with such entities. In Japanese folklore, for example, kitsune, fox spirits, and other shape-shifting yokai are susceptible to spiritual rituals, charms, and certain enchanted weapons. But again, silver doesn't play a notable role. European stories about other shapeshifters like the Selkies or Puka focus on breaking their enchantments through acts of kindness or specific rituals rather than using silver. While the silver bullet myth has become inextricably linked with werewolves, thanks to centuries of storytelling, its application to other shapeshifters is not supported by traditional lore. Each creature's mythology tends to include its own unique set of vulnerabilities and methods of defense, reflecting the diverse cultural context from which these stories arise. So while silver might be the go-to weapon for a werewolf encounter, you might need to look for different solutions when facing off against a dogman, a skinwalker, or any number of other shape-shifting beings. So now that we have been over the werewolf's weakness to silver in history, or if it affects any other shape-shifting creatures, let's take a look at any reasons there might be to believe silver might work. The notion that silver can kill werewolves has become a staple of popular culture, but is there any logical basis for this belief? While it's easy to dismiss it as mere superstition, there are a few intriguing theories and historical connections that might explain why silver is seen as the ultimate werewolf deterrent. First, let's talk about silver's long-standing reputation for purity and protection. Throughout history, silver has been revered for its medicinal and protective qualities. Ancient civilizations believed that silver had the power to purify and ward off evil. This belief extended into the realm of supernatural creatures, where silver was thought to repel or even harm malevolent entities. The association of silver with purity and sanctity might have made it a natural candidate for combating creatures thought to be cursed or demonic, such as werewolves. Another interesting angle is the scientific properties of silver. Silver is known for its antimicrobial qualities, which is why it's still used in medical applications today. In medieval times, silver was often used in wound care and to prevent infections. This association with healing and protection might have contributed to the idea that silver could neutralize the disease or a curse of lycanthropy. After all, if silver could ward off physical ailments, why not supernatural ones? From a psychological perspective, the effectiveness of silver against werewolves could be tied to the power of belief. In societies where people truly believed in the protective power of silver, this belief could have a placebo-like effect. A hunter armed with a silver bullet might feel more confident and determined, qualities that are crucial in a life-or-death confrontation. The collective belief in silver's power could amplify its perceived effectiveness, turning it into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Culturally, the symbolism of silver also plays a role. In many traditions, silver is associated with the moon, and since werewolves are most commonly linked to lunar cycles, it makes a kind of poetic sense that moon metal would be their undoing. The moon's silver light reveals the werewolf's true nature, and silver itself becomes the means to end their cursed existence. This connection between the moon and silver adds a layer of mystical significance to the metal's supposed power over werewolves. Lastly, let's not forget the role of storytelling. Over centuries, tales of werewolves and silver have been told and retold, each time reinforcing the association. This narrative momentum means that, regardless of the original reasons, the concept of silver harming werewolves has become deeply ingrained in our cultural consciousness. It's a testament to the power of myth and legend to shape our understanding of the supernatural. Now let's cover the reasons why silver might not work against a werewolf. While the idea of silver being a werewolf's Achilles heel is deeply ingrained in popular culture, there are several reasons to question the efficacy of this shiny metal against such fearsome creatures. Let's dive into why silver might not be the magical solution it's cracked up to be. Firstly, let's consider the lack of historical evidence. As we explored earlier, ancient and medieval werewolf legends rarely, if ever, mention silver as a means to combat these creatures. Instead, methods like exorcisms, burning, and decapitation were the go-to strategies. The absence of silver in these early stories suggests that our ancestors didn't see it as a significant threat to werewolves. If silver were truly effective, it likely would have appeared in these rich and varied traditions. From a biological standpoint, there's no reason to believe that silver would have any special effect on a werewolf, assuming they were real. Werewolves are often depicted as having supernatural regenerative abilities and heightened physical resilience. A metal like silver, which has no inherent properties to counteract these abilities, would theoretically be no more effective than any other weapon. The idea that silver could bypass such formidable defenses seems more like a plot device than a scientifically plausible weakness. Moreover, the concept of a specific material being uniquely harmful to a supernatural creature often lacks logical consistency. In the natural world, vulnerabilities typically arise from physiological or environmental factors, not from specific substances. For instance, certain metals can cause allergic reactions or toxicity in humans and animals. But these effects are generally not exclusive to one type of creature. The idea that only silver would harm werewolves and not other metals doesn't align with what we know about biology and chemistry. Culturally, the idea of silver harming werewolves might be more about storytelling convenience than anything else. The introduction of silver as a werewolf deterrent in 19th century literature and its subsequent popularization in 20th century films provided a clear and simple method for heroes to combat these creatures. This narrative simplicity made for compelling stories, but doesn't necessarily reflect any underlying truth. It's possible that silver was chosen because of its association with the moon and purity, rather than any intrinsic property that would harm a werewolf. Furthermore, if we delve into the psychological aspect, the belief in silver's power might stem more from human psychology than from any supernatural efficacy. The concept of a tangible, easily identifiable weakness makes for engaging storytelling and provides a sense of control in confronting the unknown. In reality, however, belief alone doesn't confer actual effectiveness. The power of silver in werewolf lore might be more about the comfort it provides to humans facing a terrifying adversary than any real impact it would have on the creature. In conclusion, while the silver bullet myth is a fascinating and enduring part of werewolf lore, there are several compelling reasons to doubt its effectiveness. The lack of historical precedent, the biological implausibility, and the narrative convenience all suggest that silver's supposed power over werewolves is more a product of human imagination than reality. As with many aspects of folklore, the silver bullet serves as a symbol, a comforting talisman against the unknown, rather than a genuine solution to a supernatural threat. After exploring the origins, historical context, and cultural evolution of the silver bullet myth, the answer to whether werewolves are actually affected by silver is no. While the idea of silver harming werewolves is deeply ingrained in popular culture, there is no historical precedent or scientific basis for this belief. Ancient and medieval legends did not feature silver as a method to combat werewolves. The silver bullet myth emerged from 19th century literature and was popularized by 20th century films, notably The Wolfman, which used it as a dramatic plot device rather than a reflection of any factual tradition. Moreover, the concept of silver as a universal weakness does not extend to other shapeshifters in folklore, and its purported effectiveness lacks biological plausibility. Therefore, despite its enduring appeal in fiction, the notion that silver can harm werewolves is not supported by historical evidence or scientific reasoning. Thanks for joining us on this myth-busting adventure. If you enjoyed diving into the origins and evolution of the silver bullet myth, make sure to hit that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts or questions, and subscribe to our channel for more explorations into the world of myths and legends. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning.